Hey there, listeners. Welcome to the Brand Marketing Show. I'm your host, Kath Langman, and this episode is something a little bit different to what I normally do. This is a little bonus extra episode for this week, and it's a shorty. So super quick listen for you today because it's something timely that's just happening right now, and I just really wanted to share this. So I want to talk about that dashboard moment, the one where you open up your Shopify dashboard on a Monday morning. If you're like me, you've got your coffee in hand, and where the last couple of weeks might have been all green and upwards trajectory and everything was looking really nice. You're facing a week or a few days where the line has dipped down. So revenue's down, new customers are down. And before you've even finished the coffee, a single thought has probably taken over your whole morning. Have my ads broken? Something's changed. I really need to fix those ads right now before I waste any more money because clearly they're not doing their job. I had this exact moment a couple of weeks ago now. And it was off the back of, some really cracking weeks, the kind where you start kind of, mentally planning out some luxurious early retirement. Just kidding. But, everything's good. And then a wobble happens, revenue softened, new customers were thinning out, and every instinct in my body was saying that same thing that yours might be saying at the moment. It's the ads, change the ads, can't afford to be wasting money on ads that aren't working. However, before we touched a single thing in the ad platforms, we went looking. So we were searching through everything on the Meta side, inside our own ad accounts, but also just, checking to make sure, were there any new changes rolled out on the platform? We all know Meta loves to roll out constant changes, and Haley on my team, who looks after the Google ads for me, was doing the same thing there. And what we found, which is really the reason I want to record this shorty episode, was that nothing had actually changed on those two platforms where we were spending money. But I'm going to be specific because specifics are really the point. On Meta, the only meaningful change in recent weeks had actually landed during the good cracking period, not during the dip. So if anything, it had probably helped rather than hurt. And on Google, every change on the horizon was pretty much just that. It was on the horizon. It wasn't yet live. Incidentally, subsequently, things have changed on Google, but we'll talk about that in a different episode. So two platforms, both, softening across the same period of time, but both with completely clean change logs, which is a bit of a tell. And so when everything dips at once on the revenue side and you spend, nothing else has changed under the bonnet, you're spending the same, ad creatives for the same, etc. The problem is almost never in the machine, it's in the market. So we widened the investigative lens, and the thing that had actually changed, kicking off that period of sales dropping, it wasn't Meta or Google, it was a few 100 kilometers up the road in a boardroom at the Reserve Bank. So a backdrop here for those of you who are not Australian listeners of ours, but if you are an Australian founder, I'm sure this will feel very familiar in your own household budget. We're not in the rate cutting world that we all got used to a few years ago. And after 3 lovely cuts that we all appreciated last year, the Reserve Bank has spent 2026 going firmly the other way with 3 rate rises and the most recent one in May, taking our cash rate to, I don't know, nearly 4.5, I think. And so inflation has crept back up above 4%, well clear of the 2 to 3 that the RBA is aiming for. And as I record this, there's another decision landing pretty soon, in middle of June. And economists, as far as my reading of the news so far, haven't been able to agree on what might be coming. Some say there's a pause, some say another hike's coming. Nobody's calling a cut, sadly. But, you translate that out of the economist and into your customer's actual life. Every one of those rises flows through to our cost of living, more mortgage repayments, maybe rent rises, what you're paying at the supermarket, etc. And so right across May and into June, a very particular kind of household opened their banking app and watched their repayment quietly tick up again, and the cost of everything else hasn't exactly come down to meet them. And this is where it gets really specific for premium brands, because here's the uncomfortable part. Your buyer is disproportionately exposed to all of this. The premium considered purchase customer, the one who buys on values and quality rather than price, does skew towards your professional homeowners, mortgage built asset holders, the exact cohort that feels a rate rise first and hardest. And federal budgets with massive tax changes also don't really help in this situation either. So when money tightens for that household, they don't stop wanting your brand, they just pause on those decisions. So the considered purchase, whether it's the lovely facial serum or beautiful homewares, or that thing that they'd been circling for a week or two, is precisely the purchase that waits while they catch their breath. But they're not the kind of customer that will just immediately go and purchase the cheapest alternative option. So my ad problem was never an ad problem. It was several million Australian households, mine included, quietly tightening the belt for a little bit around that decision, and no amount of fiddling with the hooks in my ads or, reacting with some emergency massive discount or anything like that was ever going to change that cash rate. Which brings me to the most expensive mistake that you can make in that dashboard moment. And I've watched founders make it. I've felt the pull to make it myself. And if I'm truly honest, I've done it, in the past as well. And that is that you panic and you take a hatchet to the thing that was working. Whether you pause the campaigns or rejig them in some way, shape, or form, you end up resetting the learning, and it could be rewriting all the creative or go chasing a problem that was never in your ad account in the first place. And in doing so, you turn a 2-week macro wobble, the kind that it resolves itself as the cohort adjusts, into a 2-month self-inflicted crisis, because now your ad campaigns are genuinely disrupted and you've paid for learning phases that you really never needed. So blaming your ads for a rate rise is a little bit like blaming the thermometer for a heat wave. Smashing that thermometer doesn't cool the room, it just leaves you with no way to read the temperature. Now, to be scrupulously fair here, because this cuts both ways, and the last thing I want is to hand you a permanent excuse, the RBA is not an alibi for genuinely weak marketing. If your reach is collapsing and your frequency is through the roof and your costs are climbing on flat spend, then that's not the macro, that is your ads, and no rate decision on earth is going to save you or be the cause of this. And so really the whole skill is being able to be honest about which one you're actually looking at, or rather not honest, but just have the skill to identify it. So macro softness and a broken campaign might look identical from a distance of one glance at that revenue line, but up close in the signals, they look nothing alike. So how do you tell the difference? You don't really need a forecasting model. You need to read a few honest signals. If it's the platform problem, it shows up mechanically. Your cost to reach people spikes, your reach collapses on the same spend, your frequency balloons because you're hammering a smaller and smaller pool. The machine, would be visibly straining. But if it's a demand problem, which is a macro problem, it looks completely different. You're still reaching just as many people for roughly the same cost. So the machine is working fine. They're simply not buying, or not buying yet. So your new customer numbers soften while your returning customers, the ones who already love you, hold up better. So revenue dips on flat spend with stable reach. That's not a broken ad problem. That's a buyer who's just waiting. And the lens that keeps you honest through all of it is the blended one, your marketing efficiency across the whole business, not just the platform's own scorecard. Because in a macro wobble, the platform dashboards will mislead you in both directions. And the founders who panic are almost always the ones staring at a single number in a single ad account instead of the whole board. The last piece is the one nobody likes, but it really does matter the most. Some of this is simply predictable. If you sell a considered premium purchase to mortgage-built professionals, the most premium brands do, sell to that particular kind of customer, then things like an RBA rate decision or a new federal budget or any kind of big cost of living headlines are going to wobble your numbers. And that's not a fault in your marketing. It's a feature of your audience. And once you expect it, you're going to stop reacting to it in the same emotive way. Which is not to say that, you just go spending irresponsibly on marketing and ads in that period, but you just stop reacting to it in a emotive way, and you let that fortnight pass, you hold your nerve, you keep showing up with the brand building. That means when that household's repayment settles and, they finally exhale and they've kind of gotten used to the new normal, you're the one that they were already circling. So they come back to you. So here's what I'd leave you with at the end of this shorty episode. The next time your dashboard dips and your whole body says, fix the ads, just pause for a minute, read the whole dashboard, not just one number. Ask whether the machine is straining or is it the market waiting. Check what might be happening across the macro sphere. Is it the RBA or a federal budget or some other massive cost of living upset? Or is it something else? Because sometimes the bravest and most profitable thing that you can do with a system that was never broken is just absolutely nothing. So if you'd like a hand learning to read your own numbers that way, maybe telling the macro from the mechanical before you reach for the hatchet, then that is the kind of conversation that I have with founders every week. And to do that, you just need to book a brand growth strategy session with me. The link will be in the show notes, or just head to productpreneurmarketing.com. And let's just make sure that you're never panic fixing a problem that you didn't actually have. That's it for this shorty episode. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we will be back to regular scheduling on Friday. Catch you later. Bye for now.